Hey, friend. So good to see you. Happy Wednesday. I hope wherever you are in the world that your Wednesday is off to a fantastic start. If you were here in the US, or maybe Canada, like Kyle, you had Halloween yesterday, which is basically a day where small, tiny humans ravage the earth in adorable costumes for candy. So we love that. Commercialism at its best. And I'm a fan, just like I am of Taylor Swift, which Giacomo knows and got me this lovely mug for my birthday. So thank you. Zaynetsko, good to see you in Bitter, New Jersey, and Kelly and God and David. Man, we got a great group here today. And I was really looking forward to today because I feel like it does an excellent job, if I do say so myself, of building off of last week's coffee meeting. So if you weren't here last week, no worries, no stress. We missed you, but no stress. We know you have things going on. Last week, we talked about why it's important to show up on LinkedIn, why it's important to create content. We started to talk a little bit about the how, blocking off time in your schedule, really making it something that is fun for you to do in terms of what you like talking about, what you're good at, kind of where everything lies in that matrix. Talked about a lot of different subjects, but obviously, our coffee chats are only like 30, 45 minutes. I try to give you a little bit of time at the top of the hour so you can like reset as you get into the rest of your day. But I realized that obviously you can't get into all the goodness in just one session. And last session, it was just you and me and you. So we were sharing, we were collaborating, but we don't know everything. I don't know everything. You don't know everything. So I thought, well, wait a second. Why don't we keep building off of last week and instead really dig in with somebody who knows a lot about LinkedIn and also knows a lot about creating content on this platform. Specifically, this is what really got me on what she calls uninspiring days and what I call Mondays. So either way you look at it, there are just days where you don't want to do stuff that's on your to-do list. And as you know, we have to do the things that are on our to-do list, even on the days where we're like, this is the last thing I want to freaking do, which is really hard when it especially comes to being creative, which is kind of what posting and creating content is all about. So how can you get creative on those days where you're just feeling a little blah, a little bit like, I don't know if I want to do this today. So I know I didn't know all the answers. Maybe Mark and Jim and Deepak and Tony can add some lightness in the comments with what lights them up and what gets them going on days when they don't feel inspired. But please help me welcome to our coffee chat someone who can help us get inspired on those uninspiring days. And that is Salina Yeung. Hey, Salina.
Hello, Kim. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's so good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
I'm joining you with my iced cappuccino. I love that you have a coffee mug in your hand. I was like, love it. Coffee with Kim.
I love it. It just feels like we're all kind of cozying up together and learning. So
Absolutely.
like I said, I was so looking forward to this because I think we can all relate to days where we just feel like a bunch of poop. And what do we do on those days?
Totally. I felt like poop this morning. So we inspire us by doing different turn things around with things that we love, like maybe whip up a delicious cup of coffee, going for a walk. I actually go for a quick swim, and it really helps to turn around my days sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, I think LinkedIn is always a juicy topic around here when it comes to leveraging the platform, when it comes to leaning into all the power of it. So, for anybody who maybe didn't join us last week and might be a little bit iffy on LinkedIn, can you give us your kind of top line on why you think it's important and why you have created an entire career off getting people to really understand the power of this network?
Yeah, I love that. I love that your last episode is all about like power of LinkedIn, why LinkedIn. I would say like there's three nuggets that I always talk to my clients about is the quality of audience on this platform. Like most of the clients that I get on LinkedIn, they are really educated. They're highly, high net worth individual. In fact, there's like more than 79% of people on this powerful platform have an average income more than 100K. So if you're looking into like selling high ticket or B2B like sort of contracts, LinkedIn is really the best place to be. So that is number one. Two is the conversation. I don't know about you, Kim. Do you agree? Like, I just love, the conversation I have on LinkedIn is not like thumbs up. There is things that go deeper, one more level of that. And I think that is the power of conversation. And it's really a community first platform to me. So that is another really great nuggets why I think people should spend time on LinkedIn if you're sort of like, your goals is to find new businesses, or your goals is to, build your thought leadership, or your goals is basically have more online presence. LinkedIn is really a great place to start with. Last but not the least, content. I think you teach a lot about content on LinkedIn. I'm learning your LinkedIn courses, by the way. I absolutely love it. Content is so powerful these days, and LinkedIn really allows so many different facets, from long form articles to short form nuggets, like like a short post. It really allows so many like business decision makers to be able to see it on the newsfeed and discover you as well as your brands. And that is why I think LinkedIn is so incredibly powerful.
I'm curious, what kind of content have you seen lately that you just feel like is really resonating? Or when you work with people, you're like, man, if you do nothing else, like, can you please do a post about, I don't know, how you got your job or something like that? Like, what's like the one nugget that you've kind of doubled down on clients about?
Like around like using LinkedIn particularly?
Yeah, like just I feel like one thing that I always encourage people to do on LinkedIn is to talk about a win that they had that they're really proud of, but the why, not just I won an award, but why it was important. Oh, I lost my dad last year. And so this,
Yeah.
because I think people fall in love with stories a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when you work with people, like, is there a specific story you encourage them to tell, or maybe a little anecdote that you tell them to think about?
Yeah, I always go for origin story, like where did they land to what they're doing right now? What's passion? What type of like the start to like the hero story of someone. So I would say like the CEO origin story, it's where I usually go about it. And don't let other people to tell your story. Tell your own story, right?
1,000%. So for somebody that might be joining us today who's like, yes, like, Salina, I agree with you. I need to tell my origin story, but they're kind of stuck. They have the should down, I should do it, but they don't have the how down. How would they get started doing that?
Love that questions. I would actually start by two-step backward. It's to engage first and also consume. I think sometimes when you're consuming enough and warming yourself up to this platform, it's so much easier for you to see the beauty of sharing your own. Because I think, like I mentioned earlier, it's a very community first platform. People engaging here is like very professional, very like positive. And when you see that, it really takes away the fear of sharing your own story. And once you started to see that like benefit, sharing your story, like whether it's like the why that you mentioned, from where they were previously and where they are at right now, and some of the key learnings they have gone along the way of their career, of like their business, and share that piece with people. That's like, I think it's how to go about it. Yeah.
And I want to kind of clarify with you. Okay, here's the tea. There are some creators on this platform who, I'm not gonna lie, they annoy me. I've tried to block them. They treat it like Facebook. They're like posting about, I don't know, random stuff that has nothing to do with kind of, I think of LinkedIn as like business. It's almost like we're at a networking event. Like, we're helping each other, we're growing, we're learning. And they're kind of bringing in like, my dog has diarrhea or something. And I'm like, why is this here? What are we doing here? And so I'm curious, when you say like bring in your origin story, how much of that should be kind of work related versus how much of it should be as a person. I know there are some of us here today that are kind of like, how do we merge those two things, or what's a framework that you think about it?
Yeah, I always think about like your personal life and your professional life is your whole identity. So why
Mhm.
splitting into two? Like obviously like your dog having diarrhea, like to me those are not value driven content. Like why do you want to tell people your dog have diarrhea? What's your purpose, right? Like if there's a goal in place with your content, whether it's like, sharing your thought leadership, sharing your expertise, sharing your story, sharing your lesson learned, those are the things that is very welcome on LinkedIn. And I highly encourage people doing that as well, right? So I would go with the why, back to your really great tips of your why, the reason. But when I'm talking about breaking down origin story, I would really go for the, zero to hero, where they were at previously, maybe 5 years ago, 3 years ago. What are some of the steps it took them to get to where they are at right now? And what are the lesson learned or mistake have made? And help people maybe 2 or 3 years ago self to be better at something, to make fewer mistakes. And that's, I think, is the power of origin story. And I think a lot of people can relate to it, like including myself. Like I know a lot of people, are in corporate America previously, and then decided to, quit their corporate jobs and, have their own business. There must be so much like big learning curve there. Like why skipping ahead all those tiny little steps where it helps others to go further in both of their careers or business? Yeah.
I feel like that's such a huge one. And I mean, even with your own origin story, I think some people would maybe check out your LinkedIn or look at your resume and say, she was working at LinkedIn. Like, what a cush, great job, like good salary, healthcare benefits, you got the 401k, you got the vacation days, you're sitting pretty. And you kind of were like, no, I'm gonna go do, this totally new thing. And so I'm curious what kind of drove you, or what need were you seeing that you're like, this is really what I want to put my energy into?
Oh my goodness, I love that. I would say I'm an accidental entrepreneur. So mainly with COVID, I know it's like, oh my gosh, COVID again, Salina, Kim, like let's not talk about that anymore. But I would say thanks to COVID, the bad situation I'm in, and it really pushes me to start prioritizing myself and my family. So I was in a long distance relationship with my husband and my family for a long, long time. And I choose my career over actually anything. If anybody is interested, check out my origin story on LinkedIn and YouTube. I talk I make up videos talking about that. But I started to reflect, what's my life priorities? Do I want to continue living, so far apart from my husband and my family? And I make a decision. I was like, you know what? Enough is enough. Let's prioritize myself as well as prioritize what is actually important in my life. So I decided to quit in the middle of COVID and started to do my own thing. And I don't even know what to do. I was like, started to blog about LinkedIn tips and about everything, literally, like how to find jobs, anything you can possibly think about, like Sales Navigator, whatever that is that LinkedIn provide. And my old clients started message me. And I think when you mentioned, Kim, the power of networking on LinkedIn is so incredible. That is my first client. I literally need to Google how much should I be asking to pay as a keynote speaker, and sort of train a corporate sales and marketing team. Because previously when I was working at LinkedIn, I cannot ask for money because we just give those training for clients for free. So in order to like betterment their campaigns, like make improvements on everything that they do in the business. So it's like kind of like a flip of the switch for me, knowing that I can actually make something out of my skills and it's transferable. Equally, my audience is transferable. Everybody that I have worked with previously and the audience that I'm growing right now, it's all transferable. So if tomorrow I don't want to do using LinkedIn for business, I can easily create something that I'm passionate about.
Well, and I love it because there are people that know that you have this great talent and they're like, I know that I can go to you and you can help me be better, which I think is such a beautiful gift. But I know that, a lot of people are kind of looking for those prescription, like do this, don't do this. And I also know that sometimes people have their own ideas about things that like they think is a really great idea. And you're kind of like, ooh, ooh, ooh,
Yeah.
like do not do that. So in those situations, what are some things that you kind of feel like you're regularly telling, whether it's clients or attendees at your speaking events, like, please stop doing like this thing?
Yeah, I would say two big things. One is reposting. Don't repost other people's posts. Like create something original. Like you have your own
Yeah.
thoughts, you have your own insight. Why reposting somebody's post? So that's A. B is slapping people with sales pitch the minute you got accepted their LinkedIn invitation. It's like my number one red flags. I was like, oh my goodness, like I cannot believe it's a two-way street. I allowed you to be in my LinkedIn network and you decided to do this to me. So this is like the two big thing that I absolutely hate.
I totally hear you on the reposting. I did this to somebody in real life lately, so I'm gonna show you because I think it's funny.
Yes,
So
please.
they were also asking me about reposting, and they're like, "Well, what if I don't want to put my own thought to it?" And I said, "Imagine that we were again going to meet for coffee, and you here's your coffee cup." And we're sitting down, and hi Kim, how are you? Oh, hi Bob, how are you? Okay, we're kind of chatting, and then you just took something with words like an article and you just went like this, and I was looking at it like, what do you want me to read this? Is this something you wrote? Why are you handing this to me?
Yeah.
Right? You would never do that in real life. Instead, you would say, oh my gosh, I whatever, picked this up on the way to the subway station. My ex coworker wrote this. I feel like it's totally packed with a lot of great takeaway points. And I was like, anything that you would actually say, like all those things, when you go to repost, write that so that people know, why are you showing me this? Like, what is so great about this? And so I totally hear you on just like the raw repost. I just imagine somebody being like,
Read this.
with like no context. Like, why am I reading this? What's going on?
Yeah. I love it. And there's no value there and there's no purpose, right? It could be a post that is resonates so much with you, but like you said, you need to give some backstory. Is it like you read it in the subway, you find it really interesting? Okay, then write about it, right? Write about why you want to repost this particular post. Yeah.
Exactly. You kind of have to add your own little sprinkle on somebody's magic sauce. Like you gotta add your own little flavor. You can't just be reposting it like crazy.
Absolutely. I love that.
So talk to me about your new LinkedIn Learning Nano course, creating content on uninspiring days. What kind of led you to create this course on LinkedIn Learning? What have you heard back from people who have taken the course and maybe put it into action?
Yeah, I actually are the one that have troubles creating content initially. And that's why I was like, I don't think I'm the only person that is having those days that, have brain fart, you have no idea what to talk about, but equally I still want to like basically create content that resonate with my audience, be consistent, showing up online, right? And I started to like, oh, I think this would be a really interesting topic to teach people that as long as you have a system, you can be able to be consistent to show up online every single day, right? Despite the holiday is coming in. We just talked about Halloween just now, or Thanksgiving is coming in, Christmas is coming in. There is ability of pulling in all the amazing things that you have learned previously, things that you want to share with your audience previously in a library. And you can batch them. You can have extra pieces of content. Imagine that. Like, it's like almost like you're replenishing your grocery, and you have that extra back of, like the dish powder, and you won't be like, oh my gosh, the last pack I already used. And that's, to me, is content for a lot of people. And if we just rewire how we think about content as something is like a system, we consistently showing up online for our audience. You hosting this amazing Coffee with Kim show, you're doing it like every single week for your audience. Because of that, it allows you to grow your audience and have that audience get sticky with you. And equally, anybody can do that. Anyone, like a CEO of a company, someone that is an intern of a company, anybody can do that as long as you have a system. And that is why I creating content on uninspiring days, step by step.
I love this idea of really kind of digging into content and kind of having a content vault, if you will. What are your views on repurposing content or kind of bringing back a greatest hits album, if you will?
Yeah, I do that all the time. I actually repurpose most of my LinkedIn content to my newsletter too, to highlight what are some of the high performing posts. Because you know what is very funny? You and I know our content the most. Nobody else know our content as much as we're the creator doing that. So my question is, would anyone go back, link that post and say, hey, Kim, I saw you posting this 3 months ago. That would be crazy. Maybe that person is super obsessed with what we're sharing. Great. But I never have anyone have done that. And if you think it's kind of weird to like share the same thing, then maybe just change the first sentence or change it slightly relevant to the time or festival or like during the period. Like now we talk about recession a lot. We talk a lot about like the economic downtrend. We talk a lot about like tech companies like lay off a lot of people. Maybe those are the current subject, or AI, right? Then those are the current subject. You can just like change it slightly to make it relevant, but equally use the same copy, same messaging, same content that you have put together. So definitely yes, yes, yes.
Well, and what I always try to remind people as well is, you're always adding to your LinkedIn. So somebody new might have come to the party, if you will, and what you posted 6 months ago is actually brand new to them because they haven't seen it. And to your point, in terms of people remembering, this is a true story. I recently rented a book at the library, super excited about it, got the book, got home. I got probably like 3 chapters in and I was like, this sounds familiar. Like it's jogging something. I get 5 chapters. I get about 6 chapters in and I'm like, I've read this book. Yeah, I read the book already. And so totally forgot. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. I forgot I read the book. I was thinking I hadn't read it. I had. And so I always say, if you're doing that with your own self, which hopefully I'm not alone in doing very silly things like that, nobody else is paying attention.
Exactly.
Nobody knows what you posted 3 months ago. I don't even know a book I read 3 months ago.
Absolutely.
So,
which book is it that you read twice now?
Mad Honey. Great book. But yeah, so for anyone,
I love that. You were like 6 chapter in. Wait, something like interesting. I remember reading this.
Like, what is gonna do that? I'm curious when we're talking about content and you're talking about vaulting content, I need 2 pieces of advice from you because I feel like there's gonna be people here today that are like, oh my gosh, Salina, I'm like just starting, like sort of like the junior varsity team. Like, don't give me anything too hard. Like, I'm still in the shallow end, like learning to swim. And then there's going to be people who are joining this coffee session who are like, yes, I'm already pumping out, 2 or 3 posts a week.
Yeah.
When you're talking about like content vault or batching, what are kind of like 2 pieces of advice you could give kind of aimed at each of those groups? Because I know it's not a one size fits all. If somebody's kind of never really posted and then somebody's doing it 3 times a week, it's like 2 different situations.
Oh my gosh. I love this so much because I just literally got off a call from a client and they're like so worried about like putting themselves out there, creating content. This piece of advice apply to both beginners and like advanced content creators. Sometimes it's a reminder for myself too. So there's always, you see like LinkedIn top trends, LinkedIn top algorithm hacks,
Yeah.
things that we saw on LinkedIn all the time. Like let's say the like last like season is carousel. Last year is LinkedIn poll. And you will see people just creating specifically those content to hack the system to grow their channels. But I would really urge and encourage you, whoever that is listening right now, is to find your specialties on content. What are those specialties content pieces that you delight you the most of creating? Because that's the route of being consistent on the platform. If you're not even passionate about creating poll, if you're not passionate about creating graphic like in Canva, so to hack your way on creating carousel posts, then my question to you is like, what's the point? So my delights of creating content is video. I just love channeling my messaging through video. I find that is the best way for me to connect with my audience. So find that format that you can do that for a long time. So for beginners, the same. Don't put your blinders on. Look at what are some of the things that delight you the most. It could be even LinkedIn article. It could be anything that possibly be. Figure out whether you're a writer by trade, whether you are a designer by trade, maybe carousel for you. If you're a public speaker, like Kim, like do a LinkedIn live show to connect with the audience, creating video to connect with your audience. So figuring that specialties, your content specialties out first.
Speaking of LinkedIn sort of hacks and the carousels and the polls, I'm curious because, again, you're an expert on the platform. You're on this thing all day, every day. What are some things that you're seeing or things that you're like, oh, wow, like this is becoming a thing. I'm seeing more and more of this.
Maybe more visual driven content. I find LinkedIn started to pick up more, and I actually are all for it. And more conversation that is like a thread, not just like I like your post about on LinkedIn, that's it. There is like questions involved. There's like a thread that a back and forth conversation. I see that as something that LinkedIn is focusing on, and at the same time the creators and the audience are also doing at the same time.
Well, and I really find too that some days, kind of when you're talking about uninspiring days, some things that I do on days where I'm feeling a little low energy is I will just kind of cruise the platform and scroll away and then just engage on other people's posts. Oh wow, Shelby, what a great point. Like, where can I download that book, or whatever it is? Because sometimes, to your point, like responding and kind of getting in a conversation with people is also really valuable and helpful.
Yeah, very fun. Like it's something that I always find it really interesting, especially if you're sharing an insight, you're sharing a nugget. Sometimes you have people that have a different opinion to you, but being very respectful and telling you this is how I feel about these things. For instance, the other week I was sharing like, don't just use your headlines as your job title. Like, don't say CEO of the In Academy, CEO of something. Change it to something like people is searching for those keywords, right? But I have people like just disagree with me, but respectfully, they will share with me why from their career perspective, and I'm all for it. Like I'm open for it, and it's really interesting to see different like views and different like conversations spark based on that. Yeah.
Totally. And I always tell people all the time, anyone who is like, well, I know that the algorithm for a fact likes this better. They're full of baloney, because as we both know, the algorithms are changing all the time. What worked last Wednesday isn't going to work this Wednesday, which might not work again next Wednesday. Like at the end of the day, you just kind of have to stay true to yourself and true to your hero's journey and your origin story, and kind of don't worry about all the fluff that people are trying to tell you about all the time.
Absolutely. And go back to your why. Why are you creating or sharing your views in the very first place to like your biggest, best tips ever? why you're creating on LinkedIn. And once you figure out the why, everything comes very naturally for all the action, all the activity that you took on the platform. And that's how you grow your audience very naturally and authentically on this powerful platform.
Oh my gosh, 1,000%. Well, for somebody who's kind of, you're in the trenches, you're doing this work all day, every day. You know, one of the questions that we always ask people is, what is one kind of work related thing that you have started using lately that you really love? So I'm curious for you, one, yes, to have you answer that question, but I'm hoping you could also maybe answer that question personally for me in terms of content creation.
Yeah.
Like, what is something that you use for content creation that you're like, this, whatever app or system or whatever is awesome?
Yeah. So I mix between ClickUp and Notion. So I really love doing copywriting on Notion, and Notion has this amazing AI tool that, I mean, I personally still use ChatGPT, but something about ChatGPT doesn't really help a writer in me. But Notion AI really helps, and it's like almost like a mixed baby between a ChatGPT and a Grammarly, and also WordTune, if anybody are familiar with that tool. And it allows you to basically change the tone of voice. Like if you want to make it more casual, more professional, it will clean, obviously your grammar up, everything. And you can also tell them like, oh, each line, I just want a specific character. So to optimize for LinkedIn, Notion is really my go-to. As for the content creation, I really like using ClickUp because ClickUp is like a project management tool. But again, really choose a tool that you love the most. I think by the end of the day, it's really like that, how you familiarize with it. So I use it for my cold to hot lead tracker. I use all my like clients onboarding and offboarding form. And at the same time, all my content management is there. So my videographer, and my VA would be like, collaborating on that channels and plus me. So we basically, sort of like know when is the time that we'll be batching content, which is every 20th of the month. And we'll have like all the content ready for the next month to blast for, November. November now it's like fully sort of like planned. And I think having that tool, having that system in place is really a game changer to be consistent on any platforms out there, whether you're creating on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, wherever. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like I cannot wait to look into WorkTune. I've never heard of WorkTune. So I have some Googling to do when we hang up for sure. I'm curious, when you're talking about obviously creating all this content, I'm sure at the same time you yourself are a consumer of content. So I'm curious if there are any maybe newsletters that you make sure to read every single week or podcasts that you kind of religiously listen to. Like what are some content areas that you yourself consume from?
Yeah, sure. So one is Cody Sanchez Contrarian Thinking. I love reading her like newsletter. I actually would binge read sometimes or like reread, is there a word? Reread it multiple times because like there's always so much amazing nugget she talk about. Speaking of Halloween, right? She really dissects Spirit, the Spirit brand pop up. They only, it's like a business model, operate like 1 month a year and super lucrative, really like profitable. At a small business owner like myself, I geek out knowing these type of tips, right? So I absolutely love binge read her newsletter. The other podcast I like to basically listen to every now and then is Alex Hormozi, The Game. He really like talk so much about great ideas about, content creation, how to basically give before you take, all those really good nuggets for a small business owner to thrive. And also being a content creator, it's like the future of entrepreneurship. So I really like his stuff there as well.
I will also say I'm halfway through. I haven't finished it, but Cody was just on the My First Million podcast.
Yes.
So for anyone that is looking for one, any more Cody content, and two, a new podcast, Cody's episode on My First Million, Sam and Shane's podcast, I think you'd really like. So shameless plug for that episode.
Thank you. I have heard about it, but I never really like tune into that. I'm excited to also save it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My First Million. It's a super easy to remember name. And Cody Sanchez, I think it was like their either this week's episode or last week's. Maybe it was last week's, but it's right there at the top when you search for it.
I love it. I love it. And I think like she's like such in a blue ocean niche where she's teaching people to buy boring businesses. And I was like, who have ever thought about that? It's such a great idea. And I want to learn more about it because like I'm the person that actually creates something from scratch. And I think you too, you built your own business and consultancy. So it's like really interesting to know what are some of the indicators for people to buy businesses. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like they are producing a massive amount of good content, her and her team over there. I'm curious, are there any other people that you follow on LinkedIn? I feel like these are such great examples between Alex and Cody. Is there anybody on LinkedIn that you also follow that you're just like, wow, they're always putting out stuff that I find helpful or interesting?
Yeah.
It could even be somebody that works at LinkedIn because I guess you work there too.
Yes. I mean, obviously I follow a lot of your content on the platform. Absolutely loved it. I mean, your live show is always like so engaging. Your audience is amazing. I would say Marcus Chan is actually a really good friend of mine. He put out a lot of like B2B sales tips on the platform.
Okay.
His content is really underrated and he's like such an amazing person to share so much tips and tricks on closing B2B sales. So if that's an area you're in, I would say he's my go-to. In terms of storytelling, I really like, it's a really good questions. I forgot her last name, but like Cherry, but she put a lot of like content about like different stories, pieces. It's almost like a short poem that she was sharing different nuggets about like different short stories about some of the daily lessons she had like as a coach, as a consultant. So that is another person that I follow. But if that last name pop up, I will let you know. Yeah. So those.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Okay. We can take that as a homework assignment to find the name of that person. That'll be your homework assignment. But I also want you to give us a homework assignment, which is we always are sort of dorky around these parts. We love homework. We love learning. It could be to do something, try something, download something. What homework would you give us to do for the rest of the week that you think would help us really level up our game on LinkedIn or maybe challenge us in a new way to create?
I love that. I would go with one thing that you find on both me and Kim's LinkedIn profile that you like is a tip that you can implement right away. Go and do it. Whether it's what we talk about today about the origin story, whether it's the headline perspective, don't just put CEO of a company or like your job title, do something better with keywords that people search. Or don't repost. We talk about that too. Like, create something original and like share why you want to create that pieces of content. And also system. Like if you always set your goals in creating content and show up online on LinkedIn, then start with the most fundamental system. Batch your content, start with ideation, just choose that tool and start today, not tomorrow.
1,000%. I love this idea of, don't reinvent the wheel. Find something you already like on Salina's profile, on my profile. Maybe not copy paste. Again, add your own sprinkle to it. But, make it your own. And I would say if you do enjoy my chunky purple sweater today, I got this on sale at J. Crew Factory about 3 years ago. So
I love the color.
In Austin when it was 80 degrees. So they were selling it for like $25. That's my tip for everybody. You should shop during the off season. So like right now it's getting cold. You actually want to look for all of like sandals, sundresses, because all these stores are trying to get rid of all that stuff. This is also going to sound insane. I am actually going Halloween shopping today. Yep, for this exact reason, because I saw some skeletons that I wanted. Those things were like $50. And I'm like, not in this house. No skeletons are showing up for $50 in this house, but skeletons for $25, which I'm hoping will be when I go to HEB later. I'm in the business for that.
I love it. I love it. There's always discount, different like season of things, right? Like in Miami, our weather, it's like always really warm, but buying like sweater, like for our skier gear, it's always really cheap here. So like that is one thing that we always do right before the skiing season happen.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and taking time. If anybody is really leaning forward and saying, I want more, like, how can I get more knowledge and tips and tricks and tactics from you? Where do they go? What's the best place?
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, the best place. And don't be a stranger. Just DM me if there's any questions you have. DM Kim as well. Kim like have so much amazing LinkedIn learning courses, especially LinkedIn Creator. I know we don't have much time to deep dive on every little nuggets, but just Google both of us on LinkedIn. No, search on LinkedIn and LinkedIn Learning. There's so many like great courses for you to already start right away to level up your LinkedIn presence.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining. We loved having you here for coffee with us. So many thanks and gratitude going out your way. I hope that you have an amazing rest of the week, and I will see you here next Wednesday. Same time, same place, 1 p.m. Eastern. So I'll see you then.
Thank you so much for having me, Kim. Bye, everybody.